Hi guys, back again with us at Recap in Minutes. In this video we will tell a story about the 2012 American science fiction film, Prometheus. The film Prometheus 2012 tells about the adventures of an expedition in space to fill the history of mankind in the past. The story begins in 2089, when a couple of archaeologists, Elizabeth Shaw and Charlie Holloway, found a map image in a cave in Scotland. Seeing the map, according to Elizabeth, it is an invitation for humans to meet with engineers, Elizabeth's nickname for human creators. And they suspect that the map is an answer to the history of mankind earlier. On December 21, 2093, there was a scientific expedition ship named Prometheus, which was traveling in space. In the spaceship, a man was seen walking towards a glass tube. Seen in the tube, there is a woman lying down. None other than that, the woman is archaeologist Elizabeth Shaw, who is unconscious. From the glass tube, the man can see Elizabeth's past when she was a child. Judging from the clothes he was wearing, a name was pinned on his shirt. Yes, this man's name was David. Like home in the spaceship, this man can do activities such as watching television, playing basketball, and so on. When he was walking on the spaceship, suddenly the lights that were there went out and the objects in them moved. The sound of an alarm warning was heard in the spaceship. The warning voice said that the plane was almost at its final destination. He also checked it, and it was seen that in front of the spaceship there was already a planet. When he checked a glass tube, he found that it was empty. Then he saw wet footprints leading somewhere. When he followed the footprints, a woman could be seen doing push-ups. The woman ordered David to take her robe. The woman asked David how long she had been lying in the glass tube. David replied that he had been bedridden for 2 years. The woman also ordered to wake them up. Which turned out to be not only this woman and Elizabeth lying in the glass tube. David immediately opened the glass tube one by one. When she woke up, Elizabeth Shaw vomited after he came out of the glass tube. David also said that it was normal because it was a normal reaction of the body due to being too long in it. Not only Elizabeth, seen her husband, Charlie, also joined the spaceship. Seen also the team from Elizabeth and Charlie was there too. There are also several other crews who come to help. When they are all fully aware, they are gathered in a room in the spaceship. It is known that the woman who first realized it was named Meredith Vickers, who was an employee of the Weylan Corporation, and she had a duty to make sure they all did their job. It is known that Elizabeth and Charlie were there, because they were both about to investigate map clues they found in a cave in Scotland. That is a planet which is occupied by a group suspected of being estimated as the creator of human. They aim to reveal the origin of human life. With financial assistance from Peter Weylan, founder and CEO of the Weylan Corporation. This research was also assisted by a spaceship named USS Prometheus to follow a map to LV-223, which is a few light years from Earth. In their meeting with Peter Weylan, it is discovered that David is an android that resembles a human, which he created. After doing a long way there, the team finally arrived at a planet in accordance with the invitation map depicted in the cave, which is a planet similar to Earth. The decision to land was made after Charlie saw a building on the planet. With the captain and the experts there, they arrived safely even though they were greeted by bad weather. Charlie quickly ordered his team to get off the spaceship. With special clothes, they got off the spaceship in a car. After passing several rocky hills there, they finally arrived at their destination. In front of them was clearly a huge rock hill. They also decided to enter a cave in the rock. One by one they started to enter the cave. Once inside, they began to look around the cave. With the help of a sophisticated infrared tracking device removed, they began investigating. They arrived in one place, where that place allowed them to breathe without the aid of tools. One of the experts there said that there has a better atmosphere than on Earth. Charlie also decided to remove the breathing apparatus, and followed one by one they began to remove their aids. On their way around the cave, David found a slime stuck to one of the walls there, where the wall has a motif like ancient writing. With the ability he had, he started to work on the wall, then a bluish light appeared that passed there. The crew who were there began to turn towards the light, and called David not to approach it. From within that light, it looked like a hologram. There were several people with strange and large shapes running. Knowing there is something wrong, they started to come running to follow these people. They arrived at the place where the person stopped. They saw a corpse lying there. They see the person's body has a strange shape, and the other crew finally believe in Elizabeth and Charlie that they were really invited by the engineer who created humans. They consider the person's corpse to be the creator of human. But one of the crew there thinks it is a strange and crazy thing. They also decided to return to the spaceship. On the wall there, you can see ancient writings. Charlie told David to read the writing with his android skills. With the remaining crew, they started examining the huge corpse, and they discovered the fact that the corpse had died 2,000 years ago. Then David, who was checking there, found that the wall that was inscribed with ancient writing was a door. Even without their consent, David opened the door. After the door opened, there was a huge statue of a human head. Then there was the head of what they thought was the creator of human. Not only that, they found various artifacts and buildings that clearly showed life. Then they put the head engineer in a safety bag. At the same time, David was carrying a tube filled with liquid. On their way to their spaceship again, they are caught in a storm there. When they had entered the spaceship, the head of the engineer fell off. Elizabeth also ran to get it, but when she took the head, a storm hit her and made her bounce. Charlie immediately helped his wife. With David's help, finally they both were able to return to the spaceship safely. When they arrived there, the captain of the spaceship asked about the whereabouts of the two crews who had left them while in the cave earlier. It turned out that the two crews did not return to the spacecraft. It turned out that the two crews got lost in the cave and couldn't return. The captain finally contacted the two of them and said that there was a storm outside, so there was no safe way to pick them up. The captain told them to use their breathing apparatus and keep themselves warm until the storm was over. The captain said he would pick them both up in the morning. In a different room, Elizabeth is assisted by other female colleagues. They began to examine the head of the engineer they get. With an instrument, they examined the head. They found that it appeared to be the outside of the head, a skeleton like a helmet, and it could be opened. Finally, they began to open the skeleton and saw a human head. They found that there was growth of new cells on the head of the engineer, visible inside the head. There were cells moving in motion. They also checked with tools to provoke a nervous system response to see if he was still alive. To accelerate cell development, they inject electrical stimulation by attaching the device to their ear. Previously, there was no visible response, but after the electrical stimulation was increased, there was a response. Slowly his eyes began to move open and closed, and his mouth moved. Suddenly they saw a black and smelly liquid coming out of his head. The growth of cells that is too fast makes the head of the engineer explode. David examines the tube that he brought from the cave earlier, and it turns out that the tube is filled like a black liquid coming out of the head of the engineer. Then David met Charlie, who was sitting and relaxing. He immediately offered Charlie a drink, which he deliberately put the black liquid into a drink for Charlie. Charlie, who did not know this, immediately drank it up. The two crew, who were still trapped in the cave, kept moving to find a way out. On their way, they found a pile of corpses like they had found before. The captain who was on the spaceship heard a sound like an alarm and called the two crew members and asked their position. The captain also said that he found a sign about 1 kilometer west of them, which indicated a life. The two crew who heard it immediately panicked and asked if something was moving. But when the captain saw again, the sign was gone. The two crews continued their journey eastward. The two crews arrived where they found the head of the engineer, which was surrounded by many tubes filled with black liquid. While they were resting, a black liquid was seen moving towards them. From within the black liquid appeared a reptile shaped like a snake but had transparent skin. One of the crew also approached the strange animal. When the crew's hand approached, his hand was immediately wrapped around the strange animal. The stronger the grip of these animals, so that makes him pain. Because the grip is too strong, made hand broken, and asked his friend to cut the animal. However, when he slaughtered the animals, it made them even more attacked and finally killed them. In the morning, when Charlie woke up from his sleep, he felt something strange about him. Then he looked in the mirror and saw his red eyes. He also looked at his eyes carefully. In his eyeballs there seemed to be a small worm that had rolled up and suddenly fell. Then suddenly they heard the captain's voice telling them that they could not contact the two crew who were lost in the cave. Finally, he and the other research team began to return to the cave to find the two crews. David, who entered the cave by separating from the group, found a tracker they had used before in front of the door of a room. In the spaceship, Meredith, who is monitoring David, asks him to connect his camera to her room. When the door opened, there was a room that had a strange structure, and he began to open another door. Then arrived David in one of the big rooms that was no less strange. Seeing that, David cut his camera channel so Meredith couldn't see it. On the other hand, the other crews were looking for the two crew who got lost. And they arrived at the place where the two crews were last known. They were shocked when they saw that the two crew members had been killed. Suddenly Charlie's body weakens, and Elizabeth asks them to return to the spaceship. All team members eventually return to the spaceship and take Charlie with them. David, who was curious about the strange objects that were there, began to hold the objects there. There he saw a very large chair, and he began to occupy it. Then the big man's hologram appears again, which shows their previous life. There David found an amazing thing. Then he approached one of the objects that was there, in which lay someone who they thought was the creator of humans. Even David could hear the engineer's heartbeat. When the crew arrives in front of their spaceship, however, Meredith does not open the door to the spaceship. Charlie, who was already dying, told Elizabeth to leave him. When the door opened, Meredith confronted them with a firearm. She does not allow Charlie to enter the spaceship. Then suddenly the situation went into panic. Charlie suddenly felt suffocated and he went through a drastic change. Charlie also volunteered to be burned by Meredith. Elizabeth was crying hysterically to see her husband on fire. Elizabeth was treated because she was suspected of being infected after having sex with Holloway. After investigation, it turns out their relationship has caused the fetus develops in the womb of Elizabeth. The fetus was strangely enlarging rapidly and hurting Elizabeth. Then, Elizabeth was desperate to do manual surgery because if not, she could suffer even worse. The operation to remove the foreign fetus was successful and the creature died instantly in the operating room. Still in the spaceship, suddenly a warning alarm sounded there. It was detected that the camera of one of the crew who was killed in the cave was outside their spaceship. One of the captain's men also checked out, and it turned out that the body of the crew who had been killed was at the door. Then suddenly the corpse woke up and started attacking them until two of the captain's men were killed. To make matters worse, those who tried to kill the infected crew were killed too. Finally, they ran over the infected crew's body with a car and immediately set it on fire. Elizabeth, who had finished surgery, tried to find help. Then suddenly she entered the room, which turned out to be Peter Weylan, CEO of Weylan Corporation, David and other medical personnel. Elizabeth was surprised that all this time he was on the spaceship with them. Elizabeth also said that all this time they were wrong. What they called engineers was not the creator of human. However, due to Peter Weylan's obsession with meeting the creator, he didn't pay attention to what Elizabeth had said. He wanted to meet the creator to heal him. Peter Weylan is getting ready to get off the spaceship to meet the creator. In the midst of that preparation, Meredith appeared, who said that if he came down from there, he would die. Peter Weylan did not listen to Meredith's words and instead ignored her, and asked if she had anything to say again. Meredith also said no, and called him a father. Meredith came out of the room. Finally they decided to go to the cave again with Peter Weylan, David, Elizabeth and two other expert crews. There David pointed out a place he had previously found. From inside the spaceship, the captain and Meredith saw the building that Elizabeth and the others entered was a ship. David started checking the objects that were there. David said that the purpose of the creature in the ship was to go to Earth, and he said that sometimes to create, one must initially destroy. David also opened the creature's chest. Finally he woke up and immediately attacked them. Several other crew members died there, and Elizabeth was desperately trying to escape. The creature was up a mysterious object that apparently it is steering the ship. Elizabeth also managed to get out of the cave and ran towards the spaceship, but she was stopped because the ship being driven by the creature kept moving. Finally Elizabeth told Meredith and the captain that they had to stop the creature because his goal was to Earth and destroy it. The captain and his men risked their lives by crashing their spaceship into the creature's ship in order to stop it. The creature's ship crashed. Elizabeth and Meredith tried to save themselves. But unfortunately, Meredith fell and finally fell over the body of the creature's ship. Elizabeth, who was there, was also hit by the hull of the ship, but luckily, she still survived. Because the hull of the ship was held up by a rock. Elizabeth finally crawled out of there and boarded the lifeboat the captain had thrown out. After entering there, she got an axe. With the axe she walked through the room there. until she reached the room where she was operated on, and she found the creature that she removed in her womb was enlarged. But suddenly she was attacked by a creature that he used to say engineer. She opened the operation room and made engineer wrapped around by the strange creature. And finally the engineer was killed. Elizabeth also tried to escape. When she got outside she fell and cried, apologizing to God and her husband Charlie. Suddenly there was David's voice, which turned out to be still functioning. Elizabeth also comes to the ship belonging to the engineer, which is where David is located. David said that there were still several ships there that could bring them to Earth, but Elizabeth replied that she didn't want to go back to where she came from, she wanted to go where they came from. With the help of a rope, Elizabeth lowered David's body and carried his head in a bag, and sent a transmission regarding the last report from the Prometheus plane that said the plane and the crew were dead. And warned that if you receive a transmission from her, never try to come to the point where it came from, because in that place there is only death, and she leaves it. She was still looking for an answer. So that's the story of the movie Prometheus, which has the sci-fi genre. Indeed, this film has a hanging ending. There are still many mysteries in this video. Can David, who helped Elizabeth, be trusted? According to our theory, seeing the ending in this film indicates a sequel to this Prometheus film, which will answer all the unsolved mysteries, and will answer all Elizabeth's questions about the human creator. There is another theory which says that this film is to tell about the world of aliens and the results of interspecies mating, which were explored in the Prometheus film. Okay guys, until here is our video. Just keep on watching and see you.